That took me by surprise because I was expecting it to spin, but obviously it doesn't. That's mental. Hey guys, it's Luke here and welcome back to another video. You join me today for yet another car feature and for, to be honest, a build which is absolutely huge. This is a 2010 Seat Ibiza, and to be honest, most of this has been changed, modified and upgraded in its life. It started its life as a 2-litre diesel. It's now been swapped out with a CDL 2-litre TFSI block running Stage 2 Plus, 350 horsepower. This has now been all-wheel drive converted, everything like that. It's a big build and actually a really unique thing as well. It's believed that the engine is from an 8P S3, 2-litre TFSI petrol, as I said. And yeah, should be awesome fun. We've got a manual gearbox, all-wheel drive this thing now as well, so should be a lot of fun. In usual fashion, we are joined with Matt, the owner. We'll get him on camera, introduce him very shortly. He can run through basically what he's done, because a lot of this he has done himself, before we go out for a spin. Okay, we're joined now with Matt, the owner of the car. Mate, thank you so much for bringing this down today.
No worries.
You've been very busy with this thing, actually.
Yeah.
Not one element of this is standard, is it, anymore?
No, absolutely not.
Which is very cool. But we've got the bonnet open, as we can see. We'll dive straight in here to, well, quite an unfamiliar engine in this car, really. You've done a lot of this yourself as well?
Yeah, so more or less everything in terms of some of the fabrication and the paint. I can't take credit for the paint. That's a good friend of mine. He did that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, everything has sort of been done by myself or with my friends.
Very cool. And this is basically a Stage 2 Plus package, what we've got on the car, essentially, I suppose you could say?
Yeah, decimal tenths tuned it. Made 351 on the dyno, which was a bit low for 2 Plus numbers, but we believe it was due to some intake restrictions.
And this is a 2-litre petrol now, CDL block. Obviously, it wasn't fitted to the car as standard. Is it a standard engine? It's not forged or anything?
Yeah, no, so it's completely standard inside. No internal work done other than the usual TFSI gubbins, ballast shaft delete, runner flap delete, all the revised dipstick, PCV. It's hybrid KO4, just an anti-surge CHRA. TTS intake. The new speed intake came from a TTS. They're quite rare in the UK. Got lucky to find that one. It's got a welly cooler, which they normally fit on the S3s. We did hard pipes on those for packaging reasons, trying to cut down on the heat soak, which it does struggle with a little bit. It's 3-inch downpipe, R8 coil packs, NGK, BKR 70iX plugs. Go on the KO4, go on the TFSI forum and just fit it. Yeah, it's got a TTRS clutch, which is a new addition. It did have a Sachs SRE before, but the sprung clutch blew up, so I went to TTRS and that's been really good. S3 gearbox, S3 transfer case, TTRS prop, S3 rear diff, S1 front and rear subframes. That was the only thing that would close to fit. There's a lot of people that say, oh, you can put Mark 1 TTs underneath it, but they're quite a bit wider, so I opted for that. It's got an S1 master cylinder. That's purely just to run the brakes. Vibrotechnics engine mounts, that's pretty much it.
Wow, fair play. I mean, there's so many different parts from various different cars on this car. It's actually crazy.
Yeah, a good friend of mine says that this is just the VW parts bin. It's crazy how much stuff is cross-compatible. I ran before, when it was an all-wheel drive TDI, I ran a shortened prop from a Mark 5 Golf 2-litre TDI, but I needed to go TTRS prop to clear the transfer case and the subframe because the packaging is just so much tighter with this downpipe.
The paint, we'll have to touch on this, completely custom. It's very cool, actually. It doesn't really picture on camera as what it does in real life. It's like a metallic cream, isn't it?
Yeah, so it was originally white. I then painted it bronze, which I had for 3 or 4 years, which I really loved. And then when I had this down to a shell to do all the work, I just decided, it's time for a change. And I will shout him out. Really good friend of mine, Tom Brammer from Paint by Bram. He opened his workshop up for me. We did an 85-hour week to get this done. So we did the bay, we blocked the whole car, did a few other gubbins tidying up on some bits and bobs.
Yeah.
But yeah, the colour doesn't have a name. It's a 3-stage pearl with quite a lot of metallic in it. Yeah. So at night it goes quite silver.
Cool. Yeah, I like that.
But yeah, I fancied a change, and this one sort of caught my eye really.
Wheels and brakes as well. What we got on at the moment?
Yeah, so they're standard facelift Ibiza Cupra wheels. They're purely there for the reason that I can't find any other wheels that I actually like that fit these brakes on the front. They're Brembo 17Zs from a Porsche Cayenne. I didn't just paint the Porsche logo on it. Yeah. They are actually off a Cayenne. I got them dirt cheap and rebuilt those. Yeah. They're really good. They look fantastic. But I think the Leon Cupra are Mark 1 brakes. They're a little bit better. The pedal, you've got to have a hell of a master cylinder to keep up with the pedal on this. But they are, they're great. And it's got 8 PRS3, 310mm vented rears as well. Luckily, because obviously the four-link rear end, most of the stuff bolts up. So I was able to go for that when they were re-drilled.
That's true. Exhaust-wise, did you say it was a full turbo back?
Yes, it was full turbo back, 3-inch downpipe, V-banded, and then it's got a 12-inch by 3-inch res in the middle, just to try and calm down that TFSI racket. It's got a stock Mark 5 R32 back box. The pure reason for doing that was I wanted a big back box to tame it down, but I also wanted a valve. And I didn't want one of the electronic valves that runs off a key, like the key fobs. I wanted a switch in the car. Gotcha. So it's got a switch in the car that opens and closes the valve. Cool. We'll have a little bit of a play with that. And obviously had to modify and make 2 diffusers out, make 1 diffuser out of 2 to make that fit. So that was literally finished 2 or 3 weeks ago.
I like the little Quattro badge as well.
Yeah, I did have a TFSI badge above it, but it was. I thought that was a little bit pushing it, so I thought I'd just leave the tiny little Quattro badge on it.
Tiny little one. But fair play, mate. That is a big build.
Yeah, absolutely. Build. I mean, I can go on forever. It didn't start as a Cupra, so obviously it's got the full pre-facelift Cupra kit. Yeah. Skirts, smooth spoiler, Mark III Leon mirrors, which out of this entire build, the message I get the most of on Instagram is, how do you do the mirrors? Do they bolt on? No, you have to weld the doors. You have to weld the side repeaters out on the wings. Wow. They just tried to sort of clean up the side, and I think it just brings it up from a sort of, because it is a 2010 car, it's 14 years old now. I think it just sort of brings it up a couple of years on the exterior. Absolutely. It's got factory Cupra Zenons as well. 6 years it took me to find a set of them. A good friend of mine found them for me. Wow. So yeah, I got lucky with them, and they have all the cornering lights. They all work as factory as they should. So
mega. Well, hats off to you. Hats off to you. And whilst we probably missed a few little bits, if that's practically everything, I think we'll hop on in, get it fired up, and go for a spin.
Perfect.
So well. That took me by surprise because I was expecting it to spin, but obviously it doesn't.
It's very linear.
It is, isn't it, actually?
Yeah.
That's mental.
I mean, the torque's pretty much, it's got more torque than the diesel had at 200 horsepower. Yeah. But obviously the horsepower is just so great. I used to have a red line of 4.5 grand, I'm now at 7, so the power's more there to complement the handling as opposed to the opposite. Yeah. I've tried to make it a package that the brakes are working in the same, the brakes are working in tandem with the suspension, in tandem with the engine, so that nothing's taking over itself, if that makes sense.
Talking about suspension, actually, don't think we touched on that.
No, so it's got BC Racing Ultra Lows for an S1. So 7.6 spring rates, I think. I keep the damping quite low. The damping's on like 10, mostly because where I live there's quite a lot of back roads. I do a lot of back road driving. Yeah, you don't want it crashing around everywhere. No, and it was fine when it was a diesel, when I was going sort of 200 horsepower sort of speeds. Yeah. But when you're carrying so much more entry speed into corners, into roundabouts and things like that, you don't want it bucking and things like that. It was bump steering a lot, and one thing I didn't realise until very recently is that, because obviously this wasn't a Cupra originally, the Cupra has a different steering rack, so this is it's a much quicker rack. So probably the best mod I've done over the last, since I put the car on the road, I'd say, is doing a Cupra quick rack. It's honestly transformed the car.
I genuinely cannot believe how much you've done to this car, and with the interior there's the same, really, isn't it? There's a lot of custom stuff going on here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with the sunroof, it's cut the pan roof into it.
Yeah.
So a year and a half it took me to find one of them, so I cut that in. It's a stock pan roof, but I couldn't find a shell that was how I wanted it with a pan roof, so I cut it in. Obviously all the Cupra headliner, Alcantara dash, me and my dad did that. It's got a maxi dot MFD from a Mark IV Toledo. I chose that specifically because I wanted the Seat badge, not the VW badge in there, but also to work with the steering wheel controls. This is from an Ateca Cupra, but the actual steering control modules are from a Toledo. So facelift, climate control, Mark 7 gear knob, factory heated seats. So these are K1 hardbacks from a Mark II Land Cupra K1.
Yeah.
They're paint matched as well, but I wanted heated seats, but I didn't want different buttons. I wanted the stock factory Ibiza buttons. So stripped the heat mats out of an Ibiza, put them in here with all the wiring and everything.
Wow.
Auto lights, rain sensor, and it does a rear view mirror. I mean, it's
mental.
It's ridiculous. I mean, to be honest with you, so much of the expense that's come from this car has been adding spec. Factory PDC, so factory parking sensors. It's got a body control module from a T6 Transporter because you get more features with it. Just crazy stuff just to try and keep it up to date so I don't get bored of it, basically.
Fair enough. It is savagely fast, actually.
I think it takes you a bit by surprise, to be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely vouch for that. I love how it bounces off the rev limiter as well.
Yeah, it's a bit naughty doing that on a KO4, but you got to have a little bit of fun with it occasionally.
Handles the road really well.
So you can feel it bouncing about a bit, but I'd rather it be able to catch the bumps and handle them than crash over them for the sake of a little bit of stiffness.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and that's obviously the biggest benefit of the BCs is that you manage to keep the comfort and keep the while also being able to maintain a really low ride height. Yeah,
they're weirdly supple how they go over bumps. I find it with the Club Sports that I've got on the KW Club Sports online. It's obviously firm, and in the corners it's it doesn't wash out. But
I think it's because they're digressive. I think it's because they're digressive shock absorbers. But I think the biggest difference on them with like an AP, sort of a more mid-range coilover, is the preload adjustment doesn't determine the ride height. The ride height is separate from the preload, so you don't get your crashiness in your shocks. That's how I sort of understood it. That's why I went for the BCs. Over like an AP or something like that.
It's a proper little go-kart though, isn't it?
Yeah, I try and just try and get out and do these stilts drives instead of I've got a motorway cruise, I've got a 2-litre diesel as a daily, so these are the sorts of roads I designed this car to go on, so I try and make the most of going on them.
Yeah, absolutely. Is really good, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think it's 1-to-1. I don't think he mapped it 1-to-1. But yeah, it's KO4s. They are a bit. It is, even with the anti-surge, it is still a bit surgy, especially when you sort of low RPM, high throttle. It's just because the turbos are so efficient.
Yeah.
But the one thing I always had with the diesel was that it was really responsive, and I didn't want to lose that going into a turbo petrol.
Yeah, for sure. It's the perfect road for this car.
Absolutely.
It revs for days.
Well, I think the nicest thing about it is that although it is a very small hatch and it's got the back seats out, which does obviously make it louder.
Yeah.
If you want to, you can just close the valve, shut the sunroof, and it does settle down to.
It does, doesn't it?
A pretty. I did a 3-hour drive to get here.
Yeah.
And other than the horrendous rain and M25 traffic, I didn't walk out of it feeling like I'd been in a 350 horsepower hot hatch for 4 hours.
Yeah. dare I ask, because a project is never complete,
No.
what is next? Is there anything that you want to tick off the list, or you just want to enjoy it for a little bit?
I'm definitely enjoying it this year. It was off the road for most 9 months last year, so I'm just trying to keep it obviously healthy and keep it happy. I want to do aircon. I want to put the aircon back in. I had to lose it initially just because of packaging restrictions of where the aircon pipes go. They just literally is where the turbo is on these engines.
Right.
So I've got to figure that out, but I'm sure I can suss that. Add some spec, one high beam assist, front parking sensors, just bits and bobs like that.
It flies, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, the thing is with TFSIs, I mean, I think a lot of it is the gearing, because it's a four-wheel drive box from an S3. The ratios are very different to what I'm used to. So I'm used to obviously having a front-wheel drive diesel, which I converted to four-wheel drive, so it just had a four-wheel drive diff in it. Yeah. So it's front-wheel drive ratios. These are, I think it's a long ratio. Is that a long ratio box or a short ratio box? Whichever way, the opposite you think it is. The gearing's all in third and fourth, so you're changing gear constantly. I mean, I think it'd probably top out at 160, 170. There's not a lot of top end in it.
Just for the gearing.
But just because you want to get the most out of the four-wheel drive, the ratios are really strong.
Well, mate, fair play to you, and thank you very much for making a long trip over to take me out in the car and to show all of you guys. It's an incredible build, and hats off to you for making something genuinely very unique. And if you do want to learn more about the build and everything that you carry on doing to it, because it's certainly a keeper, it's not going anywhere.
Absolutely,
then I will leave Matt's Instagram link down in the description down below for me today. That is it. I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you have, please do make sure you leave a like and make sure to subscribe for all the adventures still to come.